Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of r/entitled People Stories. Our first story we'll be reading today. Karen wife demands my son's college fund. After that, am I the jerk for not letting my daughter go to her homecoming dance? And after that time a customer tried to return things we never even sold to her. Now for every thumbs up this video gets, one Karen does not get to take anyone's college fund. But what if she needs it more? Bed Bath & Beyond has a huge sale going on right now. So please smash that like button and subscribe and turn on notifications for new stories from Reddit every single day. Karen wife demands my son's college fund. I've been married to my wife for 3 years. I have a 16-year-old son from my previous marriage, and his grandparents and I are on good terms. We've set up a joint account to contribute towards his college fund. The problem started when my wife requested that I pull money from my son's college fund to pay for a C-section in a private hospital. I declined her request and refused to even negotiate. She complained about how I didn't seem to care about her or our son's well-being, even though there was nothing to worry about in terms of health. Yes, every medical procedure has its own risks, but the local free hospitals we have are decent and offer great care. All family members and friends had their kids there. She disagreed and criticized the poor service local hospitals have and insisted that this was a big deal since it concerned both her and our son's health. I tried assuring her, saying she will be fine, but she argued that I have no idea what it's like and told me if I refuse to put money towards the CSE, then I shouldn't be surprised when she puts her maiden name on our son's birth certificate instead of my family's name. I refused as I saw no need to waste money on private hospitals when we had free service and care available. She stopped bringing it up, and days later she had a scheduled CS at the local hospital, and I wasn't allowed to be at the hospital, and I respected her wish. I only saw my son when she came home, and I was shocked to learn she went ahead and put her maiden name on the birth certificate. I immediately went off on her, but she said I caused this and claimed I was obviously favoring my oldest over my youngest before he was even born. I said she was dead wrong and called her petty and vengeful for doing this purely to punish me solely for the fact that I was unable to afford a private hospital. Her family watched and she told me to step out of the room, but I said we weren't finished talking. She started crying and her mom got involved and told me to step out because I was stressing her daughter out. I had an argument with her too and asked if she approves of any part of her daughter's behavior, and she just shook her head, telling me to calm down and give her some time to rest. She said no, but I bear blame too for disregarding my wife's needs after she made them clear and pointed out that pulling some money for the private hospital wouldn't hurt. But my parents disagreed and are upset and refusing to even visit, calling my wife unhinged and toxic. Not the jerk. Your wife sounds petty and exhausting. I get that pregnancy is stressful, but that's no excuse for acting maliciously. She has no right to dictate what to do with the money you put aside for your teenage son. The baby she had is yours too, so her decision to give him only her name was nothing but spiteful. Not the jerk. If your wife wanted to give birth in a private hospital, she should have made that clear from the start so that you could both save up for it. Deciding last minute that you need to steal from your kid's college fund is absolutely ridiculous and entitled. Getting revenge by not allowing you into the delivery room, not allowing you to meet your kid until she came home, and giving him her maiden name is absolutely shocking. There are so many red flags. She is incredibly toxic. Has she always been like this? What's her relationship with a stepson like? You're the jerk. Wow, I guess I'm the only one here, so bring on the downvotes. Your wife is about to give birth to her first kid. She's worried that the quality of healthcare that she will receive in this incredibly painful and vulnerable moment in her life is not good enough. Instead of taking her seriously, trying to understand why she's concerned, and potentially brainstorming for other ways to get the money to pay for the treatment, you laugh in her face and tell her she should be fine with the free stuff. Sure, easy for you to say, as it's not your body that will potentially burst open, and then get upset the kid doesn't get your last name like it's 1950. You're a huge jerk, and I hope she divorces you. Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or his wife? Please let us know. Stealing the stepson's college fund is just sick. I'd kick Karen out is what I'd do. Am I the jerk for not letting my daughter go to her homecoming dance? My daughter is 14 and a freshman in high school. She came home one day after being at her mother's for a week. We split custody and wrote, homecoming on our calendar and starts talking about all the plans she's made with her best friend to go to homecoming together. Homecoming week happened to fall on a week she was with me. She starts raving to my wife and I about the dress her mom took her to buy and that she's matching with her friend. She had even bought a ticket already. I was furious with her entitlement to just make up all these plans without asking me first. I can admit it's not just her fault, but her mother's as well for not clearing it with me before buying her the dress and ticket. In fact, I wouldn't put it past her and her mother to have bought the dress and ticket before asking in order to force me into letting her go. I want to teach her a lesson about asking first and not assuming that I'm just going to let her do whatever she wants and that she can't manipulate people in order to get her way. So I told her that if she had asked first, I'd be happy to let her go to her homecoming dance. But since she decided to make plans and buy stuff before even asking if she could go, I wasn't going to let her. She cried and told me that you can only get one freshman homecoming, and I told her that maybe she should have thought about that. I said all homecomings are the same anyway, that she has 3 more opportunities to go and she's not missing much. She sulked in her room for the rest of the day and didn't talk much. I tried to comfort her, but my wife said not to because I'd be teaching her that I'll give her my attention if she acts upset and cries. I went to comfort her anyway because I didn't think she was acting, but she rejected me. That infuriated me even more, so I left her in her room to cry alone. Her mother was furious when she found out and demanded that I pay her back the money she spent on the dress and homecoming ticket. I said absolutely not because she didn't clear it with me before buying those things, so it's her own fault. However, she contacted her attorney, who contacted mine, and long story short, I got to sit down with my wife and our family therapist for a painstaking conversation about communication. It's now long after homecoming, and my daughter is pretty much back to normal, but she's still angry with me for not letting her go to that dance. I stand firmly by my decision not to let her go. But was I the jerk? You're the jerk. I stopped reading at Teach Her a Lesson. It's a school dance. She's not having privileges restricted for poor behavior, so this is just about your ego and need for control, which is a stupid thing to subject a kid to. You're really claiming your kid and her mother are scheming to strong-arm you into a school event that most parents are excited to take pictures for, getting all dressed up for a first formal high school dance? You're the jerk. It's standard high school stuff, and your daughter will never forget this. It isn't some wild after party, it's literally her homecoming dance. I cannot even imagine my father acting this way towards me. She will always remember Dad not letting her go to her freshman homecoming for such a petty reason. Yes, it's important to teach your kids to ask permission and not expect, but she didn't even ask you to pay for anything or expect anything from you at all. You blew this way out of proportion. You're the jerk. I'm a dad of teenagers too, including daughters. You need to hear this. Kids her age are starting to learn to be independent. She's exercising her independence in a safe manner by going to a school-sanctioned event, and for some weird reason you don't want her to? Why on earth should she have to ask you to go to homecoming? Please apologize to her for interfering with her plans. Please tell her you realize you were wrong. There was no reason for you to stop her from going. Tell her that like all parents, you're doing your best and sometimes you make mistakes, and this was one of those times. Tell her you're going to try to do better, to let her make her own decisions without having to run everything by you. Not the jerk. Going against the grain here, but most of these people bashing on you are not/will not ever make good parents. They were not raised to be respectful and ask permission before making plans, and they will not teach their spawn to either. That's why they're wasting their time here on Reddit instead of doing important things in life. Well, what are you doing? Gotta go. Got an important Zoom meeting soon. God bless you, and I hope you can save your daughter before it's too late. Well, what do you think? Is Dad a jerk for not letting her go to homecoming or not? Please let us know. I'm still in awe about that guy talking about the Zoom meeting. Bruh. That time a customer tried to return things we never even sold to her. A long time ago, in a galaxy far, far away, I was the assistant to the retail manager of a swimming pool store. We sold, as you might guess, swimming pools and swimming pool supplies. Anyone that has the misfortune of owning a pool or working in the industry knows that pool chemicals are a big part of pool maintenance and sales, and every shop has its own line of products, and they are always better than every other shop's line of products, despite it really all being the same stuff. One day, I was manning the store on closing shift. It was towards the end of the season, and things had slowed down that evening. A few minutes before closing time, I get a customer. "Oh, good, you're still open." I internally roll my eyes. We all know that line. It's 5 minutes before quitting time, but I put on my best customer service smile. Me. "How can I help you?" Customer, and I use the term loosely. "I'd like to return these chemicals." Me. Okay. It's actually store policy that we cannot accept returns on chemicals. This was true. There were signs up everywhere, and it was written on receipts as well. Customers in the past would purchase chemicals, use them, then return them after filling them with water or other substitute materials. So we had stopped accepting returns years and years ago. Customer. "Oh, well, can you make an exception? My pool just went down, and I don't have any use for them now. I'm just trying to recoup my losses." Me, feeling sorry for her like the sucker I was. "Okay, do you have your receipt?" Customer. "No." Me. "Well, let me see what you have." She plopped several canisters of various pool chemicals on the table. Me. These are all open and half used, and they aren't my brand of chemicals. You didn't even buy them from me. Can you give me anything for them?" Me, fighting the urge to get rude. "Sorry, can't help you." This must have been 10 years ago. I've moved on to a different industry and thankfully blocked out many of the painful memories of that awful job. But I'll never forget the audacity of that customer, trying to return half-used chemicals that she didn't even buy from me. Reply. Back in my teens, I worked for a place that sold and installed above-ground pools. Absolute worst disasters waiting to happen a homeowner could put upon themselves of their own volition. We received a call from a homeowner who had the largest pool we sold at the time. This was mid-1980s, which was an 18 by 22 above ground. He said his pool collapsed. Naturally, the owner of the business sent us out there in a panic. The homeowner's street was on a hill, with them being at near the top. The freshly shocked pool water, all 6,000 gallons of it, had washed across 4 yards, one of which had several thousands of dollars in landscaping. It killed a lot of plants and washed away several smaller structures. The homeowner sued us for shoddy installation, but it turned out the idiot had hit the pool with his lawn tractor. Apparently, his neighbors didn't like the guy too much, and 2 of them signed statements to our lawyer and the guy's homeowner's insurance that he was the cause of the collapse. There are idiots, there are super idiots, then there are above-ground pool owners. Am I the jerk for telling my husband that he embarrassed himself? For context, I was raised by my single father. He raised me to be totally self-serving, where I learned not only to cook, clean, etc., but to be my own handyman. This has led me to being very independent, especially around my house. My husband, on the other hand, was raised to expect to have everything done for him and never really learned any self-sustaining skills, but also raised to believe that the man is never wrong. Fast forward to last week. I needed to buy a new line trimmer as my old faithful finally gave up on life. I was busy with the kids, and my husband said he would go pick it up for me. I told him which one I wanted and what brand all my power tools are. He said he understood, but when he came back, he had purchased one from a different brand. When I asked about it, he said he thought it was better, and it was also cheaper than the one I wanted. This annoyed me, but I thought whatever. He tried, move on. It wasn't until I looked at it, I realized he hadn't bought the battery pack to go with it. When I asked, he told me I could just use the batteries for my other tools. I tried to explain to him that this wasn't possible and why, but he didn't want to hear it. A few moments later, he said, "Okay, my brother is coming over and we can go back to the hardware store." I thought we would either be exchanging it or buying the battery pack, but I was so wrong. When we got there, he walked straight up to the tool shack and asked the tool specialist to explain to me how my Ryobi's battery would work perfectly fine in my new Makita line trimmer. Well, let's just say that this didn't go well. The tool guy sided with me and explained when you committed to a tool brand, you stay with it due to a few aspects about the batteries. He was embarrassed but quickly did the exchange when finding out the battery and charger pack cost more than the line trimmer itself. When we got home, it started. He was yelling at me about how I embarrassed him, how I'm constantly emasculating him, and how I should be a good wife and just stick to doing things appropriate. Well, this got to me and I snapped. I replied with, "The only person that's emasculating you is yourself. It's not my fault you never learned to be what you call a man," and I walked off. It's been a week now, and he only speaks to me through the kids. It's got me thinking, am I the jerk? Not the jerk. You hit the nail on the head. He's the one putting expectations on himself. There's a bigger issue here, though, I find disturbing. He refused to listen to you and express his controlling views. He tried to purposefully humiliate you in public and is mad at you when it backfired and is now punishing you and putting your kids in the middle of it by only communicating through them. Is this the modeling you want your kids to see? How you want your kids to treat or be treated by their spouses later? A loving, supportive spouse would never ambush another with public humiliation. This is some twisted stuff. Maybe it's time to ask yourself how your dad would want you to be treated and how he'd want you to respond to this. Not the jerk. Dude did it to himself, got embarrassed, and then tried to take it out on you, except you weren't having it either. I'd be more concerned about him taking his frustrations out on you, but you shut him down so perfectly, I don't think that's going to be a problem. Stick to your guns. Find a nice high horse to sit on, maybe even an ivory tower to look down from. You are in the right here. Boss helps mean employee accidentally fire herself. This isn't my personal story, but it happened to a friend at his company, and I thought it was hilarious. The main characters are my friend, Patrick, male, then 26, Allie, female, then 29, and Boss, man who was older. Patrick and Allie worked at the same company and the same division under Boss. Allie was mean to all the employees in the division, but especially to Patrick because he was the newcomer, and he was talented and he didn't suck up to her. Her bullying tactics included, but were not limited to, taking credit for other people's ideas, convincing Patrick that the others in the division didn't like him, attempting to ruin the career of anyone who didn't suck up to her by preventing them from getting assigned to cool new projects, and last and worst, trying to get Patrick fired, which she almost succeeded in doing. She was so horrible to Patrick that his mental health suffered a decline. Everyone was vaguely aware of her behavior, but she hid the worst parts of it, so it was never quite obvious or bad enough to get her fired. Plus, she was also popular with the company's clients, who didn't know, and she was a favorite of one of the top people at the company. Allie seemed untouchable until several months after the Patrick almost gets fired incident, when the company started having a conversation about moving some of their employees to contract positions. Becoming a contractor would have its pros and cons. Contractors would pay for their own health insurance and would have no job security, being hired for individual contracts rather than a permanent employment position. But they would also be allowed to work for other companies. It was a great move for someone who was well known and wanted more visibility and options, but a lousy move for someone lower on the totem pole. Ellie, who was somewhat of a narcissist, who believed she was destined for greatness, waltzed into Boss's office and told him she wanted to switch to a contractor position. She believed the company couldn't get by without her and would continue hiring her while she also got to work for other companies and gain fame and visibility within the industry. Boss was all smiles and pretended to be supportive of her. This is a great career move. Think of all the options you'll have. As soon as the paperwork was signed, he never hired her for a single contract, and her future with the company, the best one in the city for this particular industry, was ruined. Allie eventually found employment elsewhere, but it wasn't as good as the position she had left. Patrick found out the second part of the story years later. He was under the impression, because of what Allie had said and how people avoided him because they knew Allie didn't like him, that no one was on his side and that his coworkers and boss had actually liked her. They hadn't. Turns out, Boss felt his hands were tied because she was a favorite of one of the top people at the company, but as soon as she gave him an out that allowed him to never have to work with her again, he took it. Would I be the jerk if I forced the family's house sale? I'm 20, male. My grandma passed 4 months ago. She was the sole owner of the house previously owned by her husband/my grandpa, who himself inherited it from his grandpa. Why I tell you this? So that you understand that I'm speaking about a giant, 2 full blocks colonial villa. Not only is this place extremely expensive, but it was also where 3 or 4 generations of my family grew up. All my uncles and aunts, 6 in total, and my mother were raised in there, and 2 of them are currently living in there with their families. Grandma had a very basic will, in which the house was left to my sons and daughters. Now, here comes the tricky part. I lost my mom 6 years ago to cancer. In my country, if an heir has passed but they themselves have descendants, the inheritance goes to them. In other words, I replace my mom in my grandma's will, meaning I'm one of the 7 inheritors of the house. Thing is, I don't want the house. I need the money. If I had it, I could actually study abroad and live in my dream country, Australia if someone is wondering. Now, because I want the inheritance and money, this means there are only 2 options. The house is sold and all 7 of us receive cash, or the other inheritors buy my part. My aunts and uncles want to keep the house in the family, but while they are in a good economical place, there's no way for them to pay me my part. So they have resorted to emotional attacks. How could I do this to the family? That I'm a monster for valuing money over legacy, that they will completely cut me off if I go through it, etc. Honestly, I get it. The house has great emotional value, but my way of thinking is that with so many owners, and they themselves having kids, it will be inevitably sold at some point in the future. It will also begin to drain our pockets as it deteriorates with time. It has already needed its good share of renovations. On the other hand, they are middle-aged adults. They already have most of their lives set, so they have the privilege, not sure if this is the right word, to have thousands of dollars resting in bricks and memories. Not my case. What do you guys think? Reply: it doesn't matter what the internet tells you. If you force this sale, your family will never forget and probably never forgive. So balance that against the money. That said, you're the jerk in my opinion. You want your dream at the expense of other people's memories and happiness. Not the jerk. I think if you talk to an estate lawyer, you should be able to work something out where they take out a loan for your 1/7 and you get paid. Everyone sucks here. While it's not okay for them to resort to emotional attacks, I don't think it's okay for you to force the sale of the house when there are 6 other inheritors who value it immensely. Edit: I'm assuming the OP has not put the idea of them getting a loan on the table with the family and has decided to jump to selling the entire house. Well, what do you think? Is OP the jerk or the relatives? Please let us know. He do be kinda cold for that though, bruh. But if the house is that important to them, they need to pay him off so he can be done with it. $132.21 total for a 4-night stay? Yeah, right. Our hotel is within 10 miles of a Ford assembly plant, and we get a lot of guests staying with us that are affiliated with Ford, either as a direct employee or a subcontractor coming in to do work at the plant. The Ford rate is $117 plus tax, which is a substantial savings off of our rack rate. So anyway, had a guy check in Friday night that had a reservation for 4 nights with the Ford rate. We progressed through the check-in process, and when we get to the point where he needs to insert his card into the card reader, yes, we require guests at check-in to insert their card into the card reader. GM says it's to help cut down on fraud. He freaks out over the amount of his stay, plus incidental hold, showing on the screen. He wants to know why it's so much when he was told the rate was $117 plus tax for his stay. I told him the total showing was for $117 plus tax per night, plus the incidental hold. He starts screaming at me, saying he was told when he made the reservation that the total would be just $132 for my whole stay. I told him he must have misunderstood the reservation agent, because do you really think you'd get a room here for 4 nights for just $132? He says yes, and goes on to say that if he knew he was going to have to pay over $500, he would have made a reservation somewhere else. At this point, I was getting tired of him yelling at me, so I tell him that if he would prefer to stay somewhere else, I could cancel the check-in process and cancel his reservation. Or he can have his card authorized for the full amount and be on his way to his room. He threatened to call corporate and have me fired. I told him to have at it, as I wasn't in the wrong. After steaming and stewing for a few more minutes, he finally decides he wants to stay, and we finish the check-in process. As he walks away from the front desk, he says that he will be speaking with my manager in the morning. I tell him that the GM won't be in until Monday morning. This was Friday night at approximately 11:15 p.m., but our AGM would be in at 9 a.m. Saturday morning. He says he'll wait to talk to the big boss on Monday. As an added bonus, he calls down about 30 minutes later, saying that when he made his reservation, he requested a smoking room, but didn't see an ashtray in his room. I tell him that all of our rooms are non-smoking, and if he wanted to smoke, he would need to go outside to do so. I got treated to yet another verbal assault, so I just hung up on him. Thankfully, I didn't have any more interactions with him for the rest of the night, and hopefully I won't for the remainder of his stay. Remind me again why I do this job. Am I the jerk? I told my wife to stop acting like she's too good for a local diner. Today was my younger daughter's birthday, so we asked her where she wanted to go for dinner at. She said that she wanted to go to Denny's, so that's where we went. Our daughters ordered burgers and waffles. I ordered steak, and my wife took a salad. She kept complaining about the food, saying it wasn't good. I tasted some of her salad, and it tasted fine. I asked her what the problem was, and she said the diner wasn't good enough, and that it isn't as good as the restaurants we usually go to. She likes to go to high-end restaurants. I took her aside and told her to stop acting like she's too good for a local diner and to suck it up for our younger daughter's happiness at least. She got mad and said that I'm being rude to her and that this restaurant was really cheap and not good enough. So I gave her the car keys and told her to drive herself home and get dinner for herself from a high-end restaurant of her choice and that I'd get a cab for myself and the kids. She stormed out of the restaurant. When the kids asked me where mommy went, I told them that Nana called her so she had to go, but she'd make it up to them with ice cream. We had dinner, went to a movie, and took a cab home. When we reached home, I put them to bed because my wife hadn't returned yet. I called her and she said she'll be at her mom's place for the night. I think maybe I was too harsh on her. Am I the jerk? Edit. My daughters like the fast food joints a lot because they rarely get a chance to go there. My wife hates eating there, so she never takes them. I take them for a quick meal after school sometimes, but that's the only time they go there. They probably feel bad looking at their friends who get to go to such places all the time. Not the jerk. My mom did something similar to me when I got to choose a restaurant for my birthday dinner as a little kid, and I still remember how awful it was as a full-grown adult. If you're going to do a birthday event, the event is about giving the birthday kid a treat. If a parent is going to complain and sulk and otherwise ruin the meal, then there's no point in having the meal at all. You weren't harsh, you were direct, and you were 100% correct. If your wife can't put her kids' wants first for one meal a year, then she just shouldn't come to the birthday dinner. Not the jerk. Your wife was putting her snobbery above her kids' happiness while you had your priorities in the right place. You did a great job of putting your kids' needs first and made sure your wife didn't get to ruin your daughter's birthday. No, Denny's isn't fancy. It isn't fancy at all. They've never been accused of having great food, but their food isn't terrible either. It's a perfectly fine place to get a meal, and it's what her daughter wanted for her day. Your wife not being willing to sit through one basic, unexciting meal for her daughter's birthday is far worse than the quality of the food she was snubbing. Keep putting your kids first and showing them what it looks like to have your priorities in the right places. Karen sues me for child support, knowing that I'm not the father. I, 27, male, used to live in a crappy apartment building. I had a neighbor right next to me called Sarah, approximately 24, female, who had a 6-year-old son, Mark. I had lived there for 3 years and moved out about 2 months ago. My grandfather passed away and left most of his money and possessions to me and my sisters. It wasn't much after taxes, but I was able to use it as a deposit on an apartment. Sarah and her son moved in about 4 to 5 months after I did, and although she didn't talk about it, I got the feeling that her ex hadn't been the greatest. Police would come around occasionally to check if she was okay. The kid was scared stiff of loud noises and yelling, etc. I work from home, data analyst, so I was around a lot. Mark used to go to a preschool while she worked, and then after he started school, he was supposed to go to an after-school thing. Sarah works 10 a.m. to 8 p.m. as a nurse aide. Problem is that back in March of last year, his after-school thing closed, and then a couple months later, his school shifted all their learning online, while his mom only got busier because of what was going on. I kept seeing him playing outside by the road or hanging off the balcony and was a bit worried for his safety, so I started offering him hot chocolate and keeping an eye on him. About a week later, Sarah came by and offered me $20. She was very apologetic and explained that her parents disowned her and she couldn't afford a full-time nanny for him, but also couldn't afford to quit her job to keep an eye on him, which was basically her only other option. My older sister is a nurse, and I'd seen her looking shattered and with bruises on her face from her masks, so I felt really bad for them and offered to keep an eye on Mark while she worked, since I was at home anyway, and he's a cool kid. Long story short, I told Sarah in October I was moving out, and she was distraught about what she'd do with Mark. Schools and daycare still haven't reopened here yet. I offered for her to drop him off at my new place while she was working as a temporary solution during lockdown. This had been working for the past couple of months until I received a letter from a lawyer basically informing me that Sarah was filing for child support against me as I had taken a paternal figure in Mark's life. I immediately called Sarah and told her to come get Mark. We had a massive fight because basically she thinks I can afford it, so why shouldn't I pay it? After she picked him up, I blocked her number and contacted a lawyer who told me that I would probably be fine as I'm not his dad and I never offered to take care of him in any financial way. Sarah has been in touch with my sisters who think that I'm doing the right thing by not paying, but I'm being a jerk by refusing to look after Mark anymore. I feel like crap since he's probably being stuck in those crappy apartment blocks again, but I also don't want to risk a court case. Am I the jerk for refusing to look after him while she works? Tiny update. Thank you all for your lovely messages. I can't see some of them because of a Reddit error that keeps popping up, but I'm trying to read all of them. I've said this a few times in the comments, but we'll put it here too. After what has happened, I have contacted the authorities. I haven't had an update from them, but I will post here if I hear anything. Support our channel by joining as a member today, and we'll give you a shout out in our next video. Or come watch this video next. You won't believe what Karen does in that one.